Damos apertura a nuestra sesión académica con la primera conferencia magistral a cargo del doctor Remi Quirion, presidente de INGSA, titulada INGSA y su rol en el asesoramiento científico gubernamental y legislativo. El doctor Quirion se convirtió en el año 2021 en el primer científico jefe de Quebec, desde donde preside las juntas directivas de los 3 fondos de investigación de Quebec y asesora al ministro de Economía e Innovación en temas de investigación y desarrollo científico. Desde el año 2021 fue nombrado como presidente de INGSA, del International Network for Government Science Advice. Fue vicedecano de Ciencias e Iniciativas Estratégicas en la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad de McGill, Canadá, y asesor universitario senior en investigación en ciencias de la salud. Fue director científico del Centro de Investigación del Instituto Universitario de Salud Mental Douglas, profesor titular en el Departamento de Psiquiatría de la Universidad de McGill y director ejecutivo de la Estrategia de Investigación Colaborativa Internacional para la Enfermedad de Alzheimer de los Institutos Canadienses de Investigación de la Salud. El profesor Quirion cuenta con más de 700 publicaciones en revistas científicas indexadas. Es además el primer director científico del Instituto de Neurociencias, Salud Mental y Adicciones del Canadá. Bienvenido, profesor Quirion. La intervención del doctor Quirion va a ser en inglés. Para todos los espectadores que necesiten traducción, en la parte inferior de sus pantallas se encuentran un icono que dice interpretación. Ahí lo seleccionan y pueden escoger el idioma de su preferencia para poder seguir su conferencia. Bienvenido, doctor Quirion. Tiene usted la palabra.
Hi to you all, and thank you very much. Thank you to Carlos for the invitation. Thank you to Ernesto as well for the comment opening the meeting. Thanks also to Soledad, one of our vice president of INGSA, for all the work that you are doing, all the members of your network. I'm very, very happy to be with you this morning. I would have preferred to be there in person, but hopefully soon we'll be able to do that. Maybe I could add right away here that your chapter, with the leadership of Carlos and the other, is seen as a model for us at INGSA. So really a strong model, interacting, building capacity in science advice in Latin America. And I can say that as president, I really need your support, your advice to make sure that over the next few years, INGSA become even stronger than it is now. So your input, your suggestion for all the membership of your chapter are really critically important. And as Ernesto said, the pandemic, of course, had a lot of very negative aspects, but one positive one is that I think all of us realize that we need science. We need science advice to be better prepared for the next challenge of our society. Could be pandemic, or as you will discuss later today, climate change, loss of biodiversity, and all that. So we need to make sure that we increase capacity globally in terms of science advice to our government, science advice in society to our fellow citizens. So certainly we must find ways to increase, to improve science literacy locally and globally. So I really hope that I can count, and I know that I can count on you, but I really hope that I can count on you at every step of the way over the next couple of years to increase science literacy, to build science advice capacity in your region, and to learn from you, and you can learn from the other chapter at INGSA. Maybe before I give you a brief update about INGSA, maybe just few words about my job here, my day job for the past 10 years as chief scientist in Quebec. So I think that I can say that I'm the longest surviving chief scientist anywhere in the world. So I survive, I've been working with 4 different prime ministers in Quebec, 3 different parties and many, many ministers. So what are kind of the lessons that I learned over these 10 years, this past decade? And maybe some of these words will be important for you as well as you build capacity in Latin America. So one of the first things in my mind is trust, so that you build trust with your boss, trust with high-level policymaker, trust with government official. Very, very important to maintain, to keep that trust. Very, very critical. Another critical aspect that we all know, but sometimes we have tendency to forget about it, is that you don't make decisions. The decisions are made by government officials. You advise them, you give them options, but you don't decide. You also must understand the environment of high-level policymaker, the environment of government official. And of course, science, a key part, should be a key part in decision-making process, but it's not the only one. There's many other things that they need to consider. Science, in terms of how to build science data, science advice, usually it's a fairly long process. At the political level, it's the other way around. It's very brief, very short, and you need to decide often in a matter of hours. So you need to understand that reality in government and high-level policymaker. Also, you should not work alone. You should work with friends. You should have a group of supporters around you and not have a single voice with government. You need to have a team that will help to convince elected officials, to convince government that they need to consider science in their decision-making process. You need to explain and re-explain and explain all the time. So you cannot assume that if you said it once, that everyone understood it, that it's clear, and that they will consider it in their decision. You have to repeat data, you have to repeat the basis on why you are recommending some advice over another. So very important to make sure that you repeat all the time. The message need to be clear, need to be short. Of course, you're not writing a PhD thesis here. It has to be brief and to the point and very, very clear. So in a nutshell, after 10 years, trust is key. You need to have trust of your boss, trust of government official, trust of elected official, and you need to have resilience, to be very resilient, because they will change quite often. You will have a minister one day, the next day it's another one. You have a government one day, the next day it's another one. So you have to understand that change is part of the deal, part of the business, and you have to be able to adapt and get the trust and retain the trust of these elected officials or government. And that's really, for me, in the nutshell, what I learned over the past 10 years. That helped me in the context of INGSA, that the global network that we are trying now to make sure that we'll have a long-term strategy to make sure that we are able to establish ourselves, that we are able to establish INGSA in every part of the world. Already, INGSA has over 5,000 members. As it was mentioned by Carlos, it's free. Everyone can be a member, just have to go on the website and register. We are present in over 130 countries worldwide, large country, very small one. And one thing that we want to do is to help each other in terms of science advice and to increase capacity. As you know, we now have an elected board with 3 vice presidents. Soledad is one from Chile, Claire Craig from the UK, and Binyan from Ethiopia. In addition to that, the head of the chapter, like Carlos and others, are on the board, and a few other organizations. You may have seen that recently we put on our website the draft proposal of the strategic plan of INGSA for the next 3 years. So it's still time, if you have not read it, still time to look at it, read it, and make comments to us. How can we improve our plan? If there's question about the plan, we certainly want to listen and we want to hear from you. Very, very critical. Key priority for me over the next few years, governance. So now we have a board, elected board member in addition to the chapter. So governance is very key. Sustainability, making sure that we have support, financial support, and also in terms of logistic from various organizations in the world, like financial support. We have IDRC from Canada for many years, the government of New Zealand, the government of Quebec, the Wellcome Trust in the UK. So certainly there's financial support, very, very important, but also we need support from global organizations like UNESCO and others. So very, very important and very critical. We have a fellowship program also to build capacity worldwide, and certainly that's something that we want to maintain and to expand over the next few years. Collaboration, I mentioned UNESCO as a potential partner on many, many different topics, but also, of course, the International Science Council, the parent organizations. We work closely with ISC and with Peter Glockman, who is now the chair of ISC. So we need to continue to have strong link with ISC. And for example, one of the topics that we are working on these days as a follow-up of COP26 in the UK is with the UK government, ISC, INGSA. We're looking into ways to have maybe a better indicator of impact of what countries are doing in relationship with the climate change. So more on that over the coming 6 months, I think. Certainly another key feature, I already mentioned that, capacity building. Certainly we need to continue to increase capacity in terms of science advice all over the world. One way we do that, it's with workshop. Of course, these were kind of stopped during the pandemic, but with the chapter, we hope to be able to start that again in the future. And of course, you know that on our website, you'll see many, many summary of these workshops, the case studies that were discussed during these workshops. So certainly that's something we want to continue to nurture over the coming couple of years. Chapter are the key to INGSA. Your chapter, as I said, as a model. We have the chapter, strong chapter in Africa as well, with presence in South Africa. Now we're developing a site in Rwanda. And of course, there is also in French-speaking Africa. So very, very important for us, the chapter in Africa. The chapter in Asia, also very, very dynamic in Southeast Asia, and very, very critically important for us as well in terms of networking with that critical part of the world. Two chapters, in my mind, two chapters are still missing, one in Europe and one in North America. So we are discussing now with colleagues in Europe to establish over the next, I would say, 18 months, to establish a chapter in Europe that probably will be under the leadership of our Vice President, Claire Craig in the UK, but of course will include experts in the European Union, GRC and others, SAM and others, as well as other countries like Switzerland and others. So very important to develop a chapter in Europe. The need of the chapter in Europe is somewhat different, maybe from your need in Latin America, or the need, let's say, in Africa. And one of the topics that we have discussed that the chapter could concentrate on is the impact of language and culture on ways to deliver science advice, on optimal way to deliver science advice to government. This is something that we have not taken much into consideration over, since the beginning of the creation of INGSA, but I think it's important. I see that all the time with in my world, in French-speaking community, and at the moment, science advice is more, I would say, on the British type of model, but maybe we need to adapt that to local situation. We need to consider culture and language, of course, important for you in Latin America, but also important in Europe with all the various language there, all the various culture. So it's a strong possibility that the chapter in Europe will focus on that and try to understand what it means in terms of delivering optimal science advice, taking into account language and culture. In addition to that, as I mentioned, as I announced at the INGSA meeting that we had in Montreal last August, we have launched an open call for the creation of a network, a French-speaking network on science advice. So that was launched a few weeks ago. Now scientists and experts worldwide will make proposal to us. A peer review panel will decide, and I hope that we will be able to announce the winning team in Montreal on November 2nd. We are helped there by a committee of 18 members that represent many, many different countries in Europe and in French-speaking Africa that are advising us on better way to develop that network, but it will be certainly very critical for us in the future. And maybe, and that's for you to tell me, maybe that's something that we could consider as well associated with your chapter in Latin America, to have more like a Spanish, maybe Portuguese type of chapter in Latin America. But certainly I'd be interested to hear your views on that. The last chapter in North America, that one will most likely focus on science advice at the local level. So of course, science advice organizations like WHO, like UNESCO and others, science advice to country, that's what we have done mostly, science advice to region, like for me, let's say in Quebec, but also critically important science advice at the local level, science advice to cities, because often it's at the level of cities that need to be very, very precise, very concrete type of advice to help cities to dealing with, for example, climate change. Because in the end, yes, we could have proposal at the global level, but my bias that we need to find ways to convince our fellow citizens, for example, in terms of climate change, what does it mean for me, climate change, for me and my family on my street in Quebec City, on my street in Lima? So make it very concrete. And there we need to work with cities and developing strategy in terms of science advice at the local level. So the chapter in North America will likely focus on that, trying to do research to understand a little bit more, working with cities to start with in North America. But of course, that's not limited to North America. What my hope is that when we have all these chapters, that you will be able to network, to connect with each other, exchange in terms of best practice, learn from each other, nurture each other, and that hopefully there'll be mobility, for example, for trainees to go from one chapter to another. So certainly that's one of my hope, something that I hope will be able to achieve, that INGSA will be able to achieve over the next couple of years. And as I said at the beginning, certainly to be able to achieve that, to succeed, I and the board of INGSA need your help, need your support, your advice, so that all together we make sure that INGSA will continue to develop and thrive over the next few years. Thank you very much. I have a good discussion today. Unfortunately, I have in few minutes to leave and chair a board here in Montreal. But pleasure to be with you for a few minutes, and hopefully you'll have a great discussion today. Looking forward to get the summary of your discussion later on this week. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Remi. Muchas gracias, Remi, por tu participación y habernos acompañado en esta primera reunión de INGSA América Latina. No sé si alguien de la audiencia tenga alguna pregunta y le quitamos solo 2 minutos a Remi de su tiempo. Si alguien de la audiencia tiene alguna pregunta, puede transmitírnosla rápidamente por el chat o por el cajón de preguntas y respuestas. O no sé, Carlos, si tú tienes algún comentario o alguna pregunta particular para él. Nos pregunta Juan de Dios Cincunegui, de Argentina, que le gustaría preguntar sobre la relación existente entre asesoramiento científico y democracia. Si quiere.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great question, and something of concern to me now with all the fake news, misinformation, disinformation. The democracy can be at risk with all these fake news. So we have to find ways to improve science advice to government official, to elected official. So they have to understand a bit better the way these fake news or the way disinformation is built up using social media. So certainly that's something that we need to consider very, very carefully. It was probably not as critically important a few years back, post-pandemic, more and more. And now, of course, with the pandemic, with Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, all that, democracy is at risk. Scientists need to be involved there and provide facts and not just belief to governments.
Muchas gracias, Remi. Sabemos que tienes que retirarte. Nuevamente te agradecemos enormemente tu compañía y tu presencia en esta reunión. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Carlos, and all the colleagues will be in touch. And Soledad. Thank you very much.